Midi, c'est silencieux ici. Craig, go ahead.
Well,
There we go. Go ahead, sir.
thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Craig Simailak, Minister for Community Service, Minister responsible for trade for the government of Nunavut. We're chairing the CIT this year, and it was my first time taking part in these meetings. I found it very informational. I was very impressed with the collaboration, the willingness to work together, all the jurisdictions, for looking at all of our fellow Canadians to see how we can make some improvements, working on our economy, and to see what we can do to help make lives better for all of Canadians. Thank you.
So, Craig, thank you very much. Colleagues who have joined me, I'll lift this up. Colleagues who have joined me, thank you very, very much. As Craig said, we concluded what I think was a very productive meeting of internal trade ministers. We received instructions from First Ministers at the end of January to make progress, particularly around the mutual recognition, expanding mutual recognition. We agreed to do so today with respect to services. Again, labor mobility is a constant challenge, particularly with respect to skilled trades, important for the housing construction sector, building big national projects. Again, we made significant progress. We have made precise commitments to achieve specific results for Canadians over the next number of months, including in direct-to-consumer sales of alcohol as another example where provinces and territories have committed to very short timelines to achieve something that will be important for all Canadians. This is an opportunity to take control of economic circumstances in our own country. It responds, as the Prime Minister has said many times, to threats from other countries in terms of our economic resiliency. So I was super happy that my provincial and territorial colleagues were present here in Ottawa. Some had to leave for airplanes. A couple of colleagues may cut out for flights, our colleagues from Saskatchewan and Manitoba. But we continue to make progress on something that's very important to Canadians. You'll also allow me to say how happy I was to see that Céline Dion will be returning to the stage in France. We were talking about this earlier. Céline Dion, who has been challenged by a serious illness, has announced that she'll be returning to performing in France. This is great news for all Canadians. Vous me permettrez, avant d'offrir des commentaires, de dire comment heureux que j'étais de voir que Céline Dion va retourner à faire des présentations à des spectacles musicaux en France cet automne. On sait que Mme Dion a été bien malade pour une période de temps. Le fait qu'elle est capable de retourner à sa musique est tout à fait extraordinaire. Alors, je me réjouis comme tous les Canadiens. Aujourd'hui, on a conclu une réunion des ministres du Commerce intérieur. C'est suite à des instructions très précises des premiers ministres, de nos patrons, d'avancer sur une série de mesures très précises. Par exemple, la reconnaissance mutuelle, d'élargir la reconnaissance mutuelle. Nous avons fait ça avec la vente des biens. L'automne passé, les premiers ministres nous ont demandé d'avancer encore une fois. On va le faire en ce qui a trait à la vente de services. On a aussi reçu l'instruction des premiers ministres d'avancer sur la mobilité du main-d'œuvre. Moi, j'ai constaté avec beaucoup de reconnaissance le progrès qui a été fait en termes de la mobilité du main-d'œuvre dans les métiers essentiels pour la construction des maisons, essentiels pour les projets d'importance nationale. Des provinces ont créé digital credentials, un passeport numérique qui permettra aux travailleurs de travailler dans plusieurs juridictions. 6 provinces ont déjà entamé ça, d'autres se sont engagés à le faire dans les prochains mois. c'est essentiel pour permettre au pays d'atteindre un produit brut intérieur qui est résilient à des menaces qui nous viennent de l'extérieur. Si on veut être notre meilleur client, si on veut acheter davantage des produits et des services des Canadiens fabriqués au Canada, nous avons encore continué aujourd'hui le progrès essentiel pour que ça se réalise. Et j'ai bien hâte à prendre vos questions. I'm looking forward, as my colleagues are, to taking your questions. Thank you very much.
Parfait, merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Ministre, Messieurs les Ministres. Donc, just a note, Minister Moses from Manitoba and Minister Keating from Saskatchewan do have to depart for their flight in about 10 minutes. So if there are any questions for them, I would just ask that those be brought forward. Otherwise, we'll go to questions. As usual, one question, one follow-up. And please go ahead.
Hi, Catherine Orson with the Canadian Press. My questions are for you, Minister LeBlanc. Earlier this month, the United States Trade Representative said trade talks with Canada are lagging behind those with Mexico. Can you please share when those talks are set to begin?
So with respect to trade discussions with the United States, and particularly with Trade Representative Greer, we don't have to say when they'll begin because they're already underway. I was in Washington a few weeks ago, had a cordial, constructive meeting with Ambassador Greer. As you know, President Trump had suspended those negotiations last fall. They have been ongoing now for a number of weeks. I exchanged messages with Ambassador Greer again last week. I'm looking forward to a discussion, I would hope, in the next couple of weeks. We're finalizing that opportunity. But I think it's important to note that it's not only my conversations with Ambassador Greer or Secretary Lutnick. For example, our chief negotiator, Janice Charette, has had a number of conversations over the last few weeks with her counterpart in the U.S. Trade Representative's office. Ambassador Wiseman has been very active, updates me and our colleagues almost daily on discussions he's having with senior U.S. officials. My colleague, the Natural Resources Minister, is speaking with his counterparts as recently again as last week. So there are ongoing conversations. Ambassador Greer and I remain in touch and will be talking again, but there's a lot of work being done by our team as well.
Thank you. And Greer has complained that Canada maintains barriers that make it difficult to hold bilateral trade talks, and those include provincial bans on U.S. alcohol. I'm wondering if there's been any discussions with the provinces about addressing that issue.
So I talked to my provincial colleagues, and I've talked to premiers about this issue. Again, we work with, we don't speak for provinces in their jurisdiction. They can make the decisions they want. I've explained that to Ambassador Greer and to Secretary Lutnick. Like the United States, we have a federation. Provinces make decisions within their own jurisdiction. But all the provinces and territories and the Government of Canada have been working collaboratively to ensure that we protect the Canadian economy and Canadian workers. And we're in a position to have those discussions with the Americans in a way that will benefit the Canadian economy and Canadian workers. So without going into the details of those conversations, it's no secret that last fall we were, the Prime Minister has said so, discussing with the Americans a series of measures that we thought would have been beneficial to the economy of both countries. And we continue to have those discussions and look forward, we hope, to arriving at a conclusion.
Joanna Smith with The Logic. Minister LeBlanc, on internal trade, in the November 19th meeting in Yellowknife of the CIT, one of the things in the communique was that willing jurisdictions would explore talking about building codes. Has there been any tangible progress on building codes? Like, how many are willing, and what are you working on it on that front?
So thank you for the question, and maybe my colleagues will want to add something. We received an update, my colleague, the Federal Minister of Housing and Infrastructure, and his co-chair of the Federal Provincial Territorial meeting of housing ministers. It's a forum on housing and homelessness, updated us on the work that they're doing, particularly focused around the quick win will be harmonizing, for example, standards around prefabricated homes, the inspection of prefab homes. It doesn't make any sense that a prefabricated home made in New Brunswick can be more easily sold in Maine than in a Canadian province. They updated us on the work that they're doing, very encouraging in that regard. The other area where we're going to make quick progress, and that's literally in the next number of months, by the end of this year, was the instruction from premiers. The other area where I think we can make quick progress is in the recognition of new building materials. We continue to believe that harmonization of building codes will be one of the best ways to see economic growth, both residential and commercial construction. But that work is properly done by our colleagues, the Ministers of Housing and Infrastructure, but they're very hard at work and will certainly respect the instructions that they receive from our bosses, from the First Ministers at the meeting at the end of January, but it doesn't mean we have to stop there. I don't know if colleagues want to add something on housing or building codes? Don't rush to the microphone.
Okay. Minister, my follow-up question is also for you, and this one is on Canada-U.S. trade. I just want to clarify your response to my colleague's question about when we'll see formal launch of CUSMA review talks. The USTR, as you know, issued a thing saying we're starting them with Mexico. Mexico came to meet with them. There's like an actual formal process going on. That hasn't happened with Canada yet. What is your understanding of why?
I expect that process to start in due course. Back to your colleagues' questions of non-tariff barriers, you mentioned one. I think it's important to note the Mexicans had a very extensive list that the Americans made public in their National Trade Estimates book. My understanding is the Mexicans have been working through that list with the Americans. Our conversations with the Americans lead me to think that we shouldn't be pessimistic at all about those conversations. And we've also said all along that there will be a bilateral element to these discussions, and there will be also a trilateral element. The treaty involves a trilateral review. That process will occur, but the American administration and our government and the Mexicans have also been clear that there are bilateral issues that properly will be worked on together by two countries, and it will necessarily form part of the discussion around the trilateral review of CUSMA as well.
Tonda McCharles, Toronto Star. Minister, come right back up to the mic because we have more questions for you. On the Canada-U.S. trade situation, it's clear as mud to me, really. Trump suspended the talks. You've now informed us that some weeks ago things resumed. But can you clarify what exactly has resumed? Is it you and Lutnick and Greer talking and meeting in person about, are you talking about renegotiating the CUSMA, whether to renew it? Are you talking about the sectoral tariffs? Can you clarify what exactly is underway?
I think we saw President Trump's directive to the American negotiators last fall to suspend negotiations with Canada. We were in the process of advancing, we thought, in a positive way on the sectoral tariffs. That is the discussion that Mr. Trump suspended. The first formal meeting, face-to-face meeting, where I introduced our new ambassador to Trade Representative Greer, our chief negotiator was appointed. She met the deputy USTR, who would be her counterpart in the technical details. That meeting happened a month ago. So in a sense, that would have been the resumption of those conversations. There have been a number of conversations at the level of Ambassador Wiseman, at the level of Madame Charette with their counterparts. I've exchanged messages with my counterparts in the U.S. cabinet, and we remain seized both of the challenge that the sectoral tariffs represent, but also the review of the CUSMA agreement. You said, Tonda, renegotiation. We're not looking to renegotiate at all.
Or renewal. The question was also
we don't need to
renewal.
renew if the agreement is in place for a defined period of time. What it says is that in 2026 there shall be a review. That's the work that we're doing now with the Americans. We remain optimistic that that review will conclude positively, but that's the work that we're doing with them now, and the Mexicans are doing it with the Americans as well. And at one point, my conversations with the Mexicans and the Americans would lead us to think that there will be, at some point, trilateral meetings as well as part of that review process.
Okay, thanks. I take from that it's sectoral tariffs and all the broader irritants from your answer. If that's wrong, correct me. But my follow-up is really more around, given the current, let's call it distraction of the U.S. administration by the Iran war, to what extent have you gotten a sense whether or not Canada's shifting stance on that, on war in that region, and how or if we would participate? Has that affected Trump's view of the relationship of Canada in the same way it's negatively affected his view of the UK, for example? Have you got a sense that there's any irritation there and that may be playing into the trade agenda?
So obviously I won't speak for what the President says about other countries in that context, but I was just about to answer that, Tonda. But the good news is in my conversations with U.S. officials, this has not been an impediment at all. And I know in the Prime Minister's discussion with the President a few weeks ago, it was a Sunday evening, I think 3 or 4 weeks ago, to say that that's a barrier or an impediment or even the idea of a changing position, I wouldn't share that view either. I think our position has been clear. It's been articulated by the Prime Minister and my colleagues, the Foreign Affairs and the Defense Ministers. But I see in my conversations with U.S. officials, and I don't speak for Madame Charette or Ambassador Wiseman, but they have not raised with me any issues that they have received from their American counterparts with respect to that issue as well.
Just pause briefly to let Minister Moses and Minister Keating catch their flight. Thank you. Thank you, ministers. Okay, and then we'll go to the next question. Thank you. On va passer à la prochaine question.
Safe travels. Hi, Max Paris, CBC News. Minister LeBlanc, just linking a couple of stories here in one question. How concerned are you that Michael Ma's comments last Thursday will make it difficult for Canada to prove to the Trump administration that it takes compliance and enforcement measures of forced labor seriously?
So I'm not worried in the sense that Mr. Ma properly expressed his regret and apologized for those comments. They do not represent the view of the Government of Canada. The Americans, I think, know that. I was the Public Security Minister for a couple of years, had conversations with the previous U.S. administration when I had that function about what we could do together at the level of the Canadian Border Services Agency, for example, to ensure that we're fighting against the issue of forced labor, importing goods that may have been made through forced labor. We're always looking to do more with allies and looking at best practices, and we'll continue to do so. So we obviously have taken note of the 301 investigation in the United States. We're confident that Canada, like other countries, is doing what's necessary to ensure that those goods aren't imported into Canada. But if in collaboration with the Americans or others, we can do more to reassure Canadians and the domestic supply chain, we're happy to do so.
My follow-up question has to do with the Pacific Mall and knockoff products in particular. Pacific Mall in Markham, Ontario, which is notorious for having, knockoff purses, that sort of thing. Are you worried, are you expecting the Pacific Mall to be referenced by the USTR in their review tomorrow? And how's the federal government working to convince the US that Canada has dealt with the issue?
So again, I don't presume what the USTR may publish in their national trade estimates update. This is not a new issue. Canada's commitment to strong intellectual property protections is well known. I think it's the Peel Regional Police and other authorities conducted raids and laid charges, I think, against 8 individuals some years ago in connection with this. I think that the Border Services Agency and law enforcement have the tools they need to ensure that people respect Canada's intellectual property law. And again, if other jurisdictions have best practices or things that we can do to ensure that we don't become the source of sale of counterfeit goods, we're always happy to work with these jurisdictions. So this has not been raised in my conversation with American officials, but we've certainly taken note of the public comments and share that concern. And if this is identified as a source of the sale of counterfeit goods, I think law enforcement also take note of these things and have access to resources and investigative techniques that some of us in this room may not have, and we should have confidence that they'll hold those that are doing this accountable.
So we'll just we'll wrap up with Graham Richardson from CBC News, though I know Laurence Martin, sorry, from CTV News, but I know Laurence Martin voulait également poser une question en français, donc je vais lui laisser le temps de poser une question en français après Graham. Graham, please go ahead.
Yeah, Minister, your story seems to be everything's normal. Like, this is all normal. But Trump cuts us off. You're kind of engaged with Washington, but you're not public about it at all. And it feels like the Mexicans are way ahead. That's what Canadians see anyway. If I understand you correctly, none of that is true. Everything is moving along swimmingly. Don't worry. There's a lot at stake, though, right? People are worried. Am I wrong?
I mean, Graham, I would never purport to tell a senior national journalist that you're wrong. Far be it from me to correct a senior national journalist. To ask the question, you've categorized it in a very simplistic or a very blunt way. I don't share that simplistic conclusion. You chose a bunch of words that weren't mine.
Well, it was a characterization of the tone.
Sure, and so my view is that the conversations with U.S. counterparts remain productive and we remain engaged. That is different than October. We have said all along that there will be bilateral conversations between Mexico and the United States, between Canada and the United States. There are some different issues that Mexico and Canada will want to address with the Americans. I spend a lot of time with the Mexican economy minister. Secretary Ebrard was, of course, as you know, in Mexico with a number of colleagues. So I remain also in conversations, very easy, open conversations with him. And they are resolving in their national interest or advancing in their national interest their conversations. We'll do exactly the same thing. Who is ahead at what particular moment in time isn't as interesting as ensuring that Canada gets to the conclusion in a way that's important for Canadian workers, because a lot is at stake. There's something I completely agree with you on, and that's why I think Canadians should be confident that the government is very much engaged in this file, and also recognize, and this is why we were here today, a lot of questions on the Canada-US trade context, but we brought internal trade ministers with the government of Nunavut to Ottawa today to make significant progress on something that we can control. These internal trade barriers, major projects. You've heard the Prime Minister and my colleagues. So I think it's just important to note that we're not waiting by the phone to see if Jameson Greer or Howard Lutnick call or did somebody get a text message. We're very much on the job doing the work we can in Canada, while at the same time doing what is necessary to reassure Canadians on what is clearly a lot at stake.
Quick follow-up. EVs from China, if I read correctly, and you would know, between March and August, I believe. Is that an irritant for the Americans, the deal with China on EVs specifically? Have you heard from them at all on that?
At the time the Prime Minister announced the agreement with China, the Americans had made some public comments. We had had conversations with them privately. I am confident that we explained to them what that agreement is and what it is not. And some of the confusion at the time of the announcement was not entirely related to the substance of what the agreement was. We made a time-limited sectoral agreement with the government of China, very important for agriculture and seafood industry in Canada, not much different than some of the bilateral agreements the United States struck with respect to soy producers in the United States. So I'm confident, again, from my conversations, that that does not remain an impediment to do the work that we have to do.
Bon, et on va prendre une question en français. Laurence Martin. Merci.
Ben,
Allô, Laurence?
bonjour. Est-ce que...
Peut-être deux. Mais...
oui.
Pourquoi pas?
Est-ce que stratégiquement, c'est à l'avantage du Canada d'attendre dans les négociations de la CEUM, de ne pas nécessairement presser les Américains parce que vous dites peut-être, je sais pas, il y a des élections de mi-mandat qui s'en viennent, peut-être que M. Trump aura moins de pouvoir au final. Est-ce que vous pensez à ça?
Pas de cette façon-là, non.
Non?
Non. Premièrement, on ne va pas juger des élections américaines dans quelques mois. On verra à ce moment-là. Nous avons signé une entente avec les Américains qui prévoit une révision et la date dans l'entente, c'est le 1er juillet. Alors, on va évidemment faire le travail nécessaire
vous n'êtes pas pressé,
autour
là.
de ça. Mais on n'est pas pressé de signer n'importe quelle entente. Si on voulait signer une entente qui était une mauvaise entente pour des industries canadiennes, un tarif de base qui aurait créé beaucoup de dommages aux travailleurs et à l'économie canadienne, théoriquement, on aurait pu arriver à une entente. Mais M. Carney a dit à maintes reprises, nous avons présentement une circonstance qui est meilleure que tous les autres pays. Est-ce qu'on peut l'améliorer davantage? C'est sûr. Est-ce qu'on cherche d'autres avancées en termes de la position où nous nous trouvons aujourd'hui? Totalement. Est-ce qu'on est confiant qu'on va y arriver? Absolument. Mais on ne va pas attendre. On verra si les Américains veulent entamer des discussions qui avancent l'intérêt économique du Canada. On sera là. On ne va pas attendre un échéancier qu'on ne contrôle pas.
Puis mon suivi, est-ce que les Mexicains vous ont donné la garantie qu'ils n'allaient pas signer avec les États-Unis sans le Canada? Parce que la dernière fois, on sait qu'ils ont signé d'abord avec les États-Unis. Est-ce qu'ils vous ont donné cette garantie cette fois-ci que la seule entente qu'ils allaient signer, c'est une entente tripartite?
Je ne veux pas être technique, Laurence, dans la réponse.
Allez-y.
Mais comme j'ai dit en anglais, il y aura nécessairement des ententes bilatérales entre les Mexicains et le gouvernement américain, comme
Mais au
on
final, c'est une
espère.
entente à trois. Oui.
Comme on espère avoir une entente bilatérale qui va régler et améliorer la situation avec les Américains, entre le Canada et les États-Unis. Moi, mes conversations avec le ministre, le secrétaire mexicain de l'économie, les conversations de M. Carney avec la présidente Sheinbaum, la discussion que j'ai eue avec la présidente moi-même, avec des collègues lors de la mission commerciale, me donne aucune inquiétude qu'ils vont signer une entente qui va exclure le Canada dans le cadre de l'ACEUM. Tu sais, premièrement, l'entente demeure en vigueur, c'est une révision. Si on ne signe pas davantage une entente, l'entente demeure en place. Voyez-vous, il ne faut pas prétendre que s'il n'y a pas une cérémonie à trois, l'entente n'existe pas. Ce n'est pas vrai. Est-ce qu'il va y avoir des ententes entre deux pays? Sûrement. Est-ce que les Mexicains sont totalement engagés vers une entente trilatérale de libre-échange avec le Canada et les États-Unis? Absolument. Dans nos conversations.
C'est une garantie.
Mais ils ne m'ont pas dit de garantie parce qu'on ne pense pas que c'est brisé au point où il faut invoquer la garantie. Dans le sens, c'est une question, c'est pas mais les conversations ne sont pas définies en termes de je veux que vous signiez tout de suite c'est pas comme ça que les conversations avancent. J'ai aucune raison de croire qu'ils ne sont pas intéressés, comme nous, de continuer une entente trilatérale. C'est ça que les Mexicains nous disent, on leur répète ça, et on dit ça aux Américains aussi, et les Américains ne nous ont pas dit le contraire non plus dans nos conversations.
Merci.
Merci. Merci.
Could you answer that in English?
Recap in English,
From Laurence?
the technical parts.
So the question was, are we concerned that Mexico may sign an agreement that would exclude Canada in terms of a trilateral trade agreement like CUSMA? The answer is no. Our conversations with Mexican secretaries, cabinet secretaries, the Prime Minister's conversations with President Sheinbaum, my interaction with President Sheinbaum herself a month ago, the Mexicans, like Canada, remain committed to a trilateral trade agreement that includes all three North American partners. There may very well be bilateral agreements between two countries on issues specific to those two countries, but the framework of a trilateral trade agreement remains very much the efforts of both Canada and Mexico, and I would even say the United States in those conversations. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Voilà qui met fin à ce point de presse.
Come anytime and give us an update.
I'll see you back up. Yep, that's it from the